All right, Mina, the Netflix Christmas games are coming up. You are a part of this whole production, a ragtag team of media people from a variety of different companies. Can you explain how you became a part of this thing? Like, how did you even find out about it? And, was it Netflix that wanted you?
Yeah, we prefer to think of it as a super team, Alex, as opposed to a ragtag team. It is a lot of people, though, which definitely drew some attention on social media. But we've got, two studio shows in different cities, and then obviously folks calling the game and working the sidelines as well, and some special guests. So it's really exciting because there are folks involved who I work with, Laura Rutledge, Jason McCourty, who's fantastic on NFL Live with us this year. And then there are folks I've never gotten the chance to work with before. Kay Adams, who will be hosting in LA with me on Christmas. So really, really excited about that. As far as how it came about, yeah, Netflix reached out to my people. I was pretty excited. At first I thought, wow, Netflix, maybe they are asking me to come fill in as a host on Love is Blind, which is a show that I love. But no, it was actually for football, which is my main job. And I'm just over the moon that ESPN is lending me over to them because it's a huge opportunity for me, especially given how many folks will be watching purely for Beyonce.
Yeah, a huge opportunity for you to pitch yourself as a Love is Blind co-host or guest host for that audience. Now tell me how the Simpsons host came about. How did you get involved with that? That game already happened. I don't know how many people watching this saw that one, but basically it was an alternative cast of a Monday Night Football game with Simpsons characters. Did you volunteer for that one, or did they come to you?
No, that one, the folks at ESPN who are sort of responsible putting together those all casts approached me, and I was never explicitly said to me, but I believe it's because you can kind of see it in my backdrop right now. I have a framed photo of Lisa Simpson in my television backdrop because she is a personal hero and icon to me. So I believe folks at ESPN saw that and thought, well, she must know a thing or two about The Simpsons. And I mean, I'm a Simpsons freak. I grew up watching the show every week with my family. So when they reached out to me, I haven't called a regular season game before. I do the Rams preseason. I was excited about that aspect of the opportunity, but also much more excited, I think, because of the Simpsons side of it. With these alt casts, the point isn't to just mimic the regular game. It's to provide something that's entertaining and fun for a different audience, one who is coming to the game with different expectations. I figured anyone who's watching our altcasts probably a Simpsons fan or a child whose parents were trying to convert them to being a Simpsons fan, which happened a lot. So I just decided to lean all the way into it with references and jokes. And honestly, I had the time of my life.
So it's funny because you hinted at the fact that you hadn't broadcast games other than that Rams preseason game in the booth, and then sort of had the opportunity here. I've told other people, like disclosure, like we are friends. We used to work together at Bloomberg, but I've told other people I use you as my role model for media in general, but sports media in particular, as someone who continues to sort of evolve as a journalist. You started out writing long form for Bloomberg, and then even at ESPN, initially writing sort of these longer magazine pieces. You then moved on to doing more TV, guest spots on different studio shows, landed at your current job at NFL Live as an analyst, sort of full-time job. But you also have a podcast, and it seems like ESPN keeps bringing you in for different types of projects. You have a huge social media presence. That's a long preamble for my question, which is, what does ESPN say to you in terms of what your job is?
That's a great question because my job has changed, as you alluded to, like a dozen times in less than 6 years. And I think one of the things I've been fortunate or benefited from at ESPN is they don't try to define it. They simply present different opportunities and platforms, or I ask to do different things. And I kind of think that's how you have to approach working in maybe not just sports media, any media these days. A question I get asked a lot is, what do you want to do in 5 years? Your career's changed so much over the last 5, 10 years. what do you see yourself doing in 2029 or beyond? And I always reply, I don't know, because I don't know what sports media is going to look like in 5 years. The obviously the rise of podcasting and YouTube has been the biggest trend in our industry right now, and it certainly matters a lot as ESPN goes increasingly over the top. But who knows which of these various platforms will even be dominant in that time period? So my approach has always just been to be open to trying new things at ESPN, to be constantly watching to see what young folks, honestly, or just early adopters are doing, and to see if it's something that interests me, and to kind of expand and contract my portfolio sort of in conjunction with that.
Do you consciously think about the ESPN brand and the Mina Kimes brand and how they mix and if they're different?
It's a good question. Yes and no. I would say yes, in that who I am online or in various platforms that are just mine, which is to say, like my show, my YouTube, my social media, whatever. I'm representing myself first and foremost, which is the sensibility of it, the tone of it. That's me. It's what I'm interested in. It's the way I talk, and I think that is really the way you have to approach making um, content these days. Gosh, that phrase, because the number one thing I think fans are drawn to in terms of personalities is authenticity. But I also am cognizant that even as I'm doing those things, I am also part of this much bigger company. And for many people, I am a stand in for that company. And I would say, Alex, I have that in the back of my mind, less that it puts a governor on the things that I do, but more so, I think the things that draw folks to ESPN and to the programs that I'm on, like NFL Live, which is that sort of in-depth, more X's and O's driven football coverage. Those are things that I should be doing even when I'm not on either, if I'm making a podcast or whatnot. So I think they kind of inform each other without being the same thing.
Do you feel like we are in the midst of sort of a sensibility shift in terms of what people are looking for with sports media? Like you look at these top podcasts and it's, the Kelsey brothers and Club Shay Shay and these sort of like long form interview shows that feel a little bit more intimate. And I look at what you're doing or what our friend Pablo Torre is doing with his show. It strikes me that we're maybe sort of on the cusp of something, but it's hard for me to define exactly what it is.
I think that right now, more than ever before in the history of media, but particularly sports media, um, customers can pick and choose, right? There's not like football is still one of the very few monocultures left in American society, global society, to be honest. But the way you want to listen to people talk about football, the kinds of people you want to hear from, the tone, whether it's a long form interview or more casual and snarky or more detailed and X's O's driven, you can pick and choose. I find that most of the people who listen to my shows listen to a lot of different football things. They might subscribe to, I know Ryan Clark is a colleague of mine, and he has a very interview focused show, The Pivot. A lot of the people who listen to the Mina Kimes show also listen to shows like that. And I think that's what's happening right now is I think generally because you can kind of meet fans, listeners, whatever, where they are with like a more specific, tailored approach. You're seeing like a lot of, I would say, like a greater variety of approaches and kind of styles in terms of actually talking about sports bloom, and maybe not one is as dominant as it used to be.
You look at the ratings this year for the NBA, they're down. Other leagues have struggled with ratings too. The NFL continues to be this freight train where ratings continue to go up, and they've been going up for years. Why is that? I mean, is it as simple as, well, they play once a week and so there's more drama, or is there something deeper?
I mean, your explanation is a lot of it. I know when we think about like sports and ratings and why is the NFL continuously point up? A lot of it, as simple as it is, just like an unbelievable product, right? To your point, it's limited supply. The drama is boundless. Within, it could be a game between two teams that no one cares about, and people will be still drawn in because the actual sport and the television product that is the sport is just unparalleled, I believe, in entertainment anywhere, especially given, that it's one of the very few things people still watch live at the level that they do. And then it's, of course, augmented by all of the things around it with regards to fantasy, betting, social media, etc. So all of that matters. But the other thing I'll say about the NFL is this. Um, the they the league has continued to find really great young quarterbacks. Like, you heard us talk, oh, is there a development crisis with young quarterbacks? And are we drafting these guys and are they succeeding? But to me, it feels like every year new players are rising up. I mean, right now we have like an incredibly compelling MVP race between Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, two quarterbacks who are playing unbelievable football. I would put Joe Burrow up there with him, even though his team's not there. And you go back a few years ago, and people were worried, will we ever replace Manning and Brady, and Rodgers is getting older? Well, honestly, they kind of did. And I think that's a huge part of why, especially when we consider the NFL in the context of other sports, it's still so unbelievably popular, because they've been managed to, I think, transition to a new generation of truly special quarterbacks.
Do you think the importance of the quarterback position in football is a flaw in the game? In other words, if you happen to land on one of these guys, then you're good for 10, 15 years, maybe not every year, but by and large, you're competing. You can just take a look at Pat Mahomes. The other guys come and go. He stays along with his coach, and they compete every year. It strikes me that there's no equivalent in any other sport of just one dude and like they're amazing for 15 years. And if you don't have it, then you're not there. That seems, to me, a little like something that is not great for the game, and yet maybe people don't care.
I would attribute what you asked earlier about the NFL's continued success. I think the importance of the quarterback position and the fact that it feels like if you find that guy, your team's fortunes will be turned around. That's another reason why the league is so popular, because it doesn't feel like you have to have a super team or you have to have, Met style money, right? All you have to do, maybe you finish first in the draft and maybe you find your Joe Burrow. You remember the Bengals before they drafted him, what they were like. I would say look at the Commanders, a team that has turned around their fortunes seemingly overnight, and a lot of that has to do with the quarterback that they drafted second overall. I hope springs eternal for NFL fans, and because of the draft, because of the nature of the position, because it's so unpredictable, Alex, who's actually going to be good at the position. There's this sustained interest, regardless of where a franchise is, that I think is actually additive to the overall experience of watching football.
Couple social media questions for you, because you have a major presence there on Blue Sky, on Twitter, X. I'm curious that when you go and decide, look, I'm going to put out a tweet or some social media message, do you have a sounding board? In other words, is there someone that you're bouncing this stuff off of? Or is it basically just every single time it's a little internal monologue in your head? Is this something I should tweet? Is this something I shouldn't tweet?
I could use a sounding board.
Is it Lenny? Lenny could be your
services.
sounding board.
Every now and then, over the years, if I've wanted to say something that I thought was maybe a little bit too hot for social media, I have double checked with a couple of people, but for the most part, no. Although I will say this, the way that I've used all of the platforms you described has changed a lot over the years, in part as my sort of the size of my audience, I guess, has grown and on certain platforms. And in part as those platforms has changed, the ability to use them for news gathering, for promoting content versus engagement, that shift has dramatically changed for me in recent years. And I've always tried to be very conscious, not just about what I tweet and what it represents and if I'm okay dealing with the consequences, but also how am I using these apps, I guess, for my own purposes rather than letting them use me.
Have you been surprised at all with the seeming acceptance to some degree of sports and culture and Donald Trump? Like, you're seeing these athletes now doing sort of the Trump dance. Like, that was not the mood at all 8 years ago. Do you know why that is?
I have, with that particular phenomena, I've seen some of the interviews with the athletes talking about it, and it seems I would be kind of reticent to bucket them all under one purpose, I guess, if that makes sense, in terms of like what's motivating it. Do they just think it's funny? Do they like the guy? Do they want to express a political opinion? Do they just want to join a trend? So I would be, I think, hesitant to group all of that under one thing with regards to all those athletes doing that. But I will say, like lately, it feels like, certainly compared to, as you said, like 6 years ago. I mean, look, I was covering the NFL during the Colin Kaepernick protests when that was a story that dominated the league and its coverage. And um, that was, there was backlash to that. It was an ongoing issue. And then you go into the pandemic and there are the protests associated with Black Lives Matter. And that also was a huge storyline, as you remember, in the NFL, because as people who covered the league, my job was an analyst, but you also want to do justice to these athletes when they're using their platforms to send a message and to give them that space. And I think, recognize the makeup of the league and why folks were speaking out at the time. Now it feels like that is not as dominant a storyline, maybe not just in football, but in a lot of entertainment or public life. But these things tend to go in cycles, Alex. So I wouldn't be surprised if it comes back in certain ways in years to come.
Do you feel like the current sort of split that we're seeing between sports and politics, which again, I agree with you, it seems like we're really in an era right now where politics is very much out of sport. Jimmy Pitaro
Yeah.
said that to me point blank. He wants to keep it out of sort of what ESPN does. Is that the right way of approaching it, in your opinion? Because let's be honest, like, you've been out there a little bit. You've been a little bit more
Yeah.
outspoken than some other people at ESPN.
I think it kind of cuts to that question you asked me at the beginning about, do you view yourself as yourself or as an extension of the brand? And my answer to you there is kind of, it applies here, which is I always think about when I'm deciding whether or not I want to address topics off the field. And by the way, a lot of the times it's not always off the field. As I mentioned when I was talking about the protests with the athletes, those were NFL players who were saying something. It was important, I think, that sports media addressed it. But to kind of go back to your question, I'm always thinking about what platform I am on and why are people tuned in right now? And is this the right avenue for me to make a point? I'm always wrestling with those things every time because, you know, the show that I'm on, NFL Live, it's a football show. We talk about football. I think on that show and other shows, when football intersects with real life, and that's not just politics, that's social, cultural issues, serious stories like domestic violence, we will take those opportunities to capture that sort of intersection. And honestly, ignoring it is burying your head in the sand. But I think it's all about picking your spots and recognizing, okay, how are we serving the audience in this moment? And this is a football show first and foremost. Always having that sort of be forefront in my mind.
Last question, Mina. I got to ask you right now, Super Bowl prediction. Probably not going to be the Seahawks. Definitely not going to be the 49ers.
I don't know, man. The Bills look pretty dang good to me. My preseason pick was Chiefs Lions, which felt good for a while, but they've both been so banged up. And the Eagles look like a wagon, but there's something about this Bills team, something about the way that quarterback Josh Allen is playing right now, like an actual alien. I'd feel pretty uncomfortable betting against them.
Yep, I'm with you. I think they're the favorites right now. Mina, thanks for joining.
Bye, Alex.
See you soon.